Hey everyone, and welcome back to another episode of Magic Towers Resort. So today we're continuing with the magical city area. I really need a name for that. Honestly, it's been it's been going on for way too long without a name. So yeah, if you have an idea for a name, definitely let me know in the comments down below, because that way, you know, it makes it a bit easier to talk about. Though to be honest, I'll probably forget the name in the next episode anyways. Oh well. Anyways, welcome back to Magic Towers once again. So in this episode we're gonna build a ride. Yeah, that's gonna be a little bit different. Now, I'm not sure if I talked about this before, but one of my ideas for this area was to have a flying theater in this area as well. Now, flying theaters are really quite awesome. Some examples of that are Voletarium, Soarin, and Flight of Passage, just to name a few pretty big ones, I think, for both Europe and the US. Yeah, that's the type of ride that I want in here as well, because it would fit really well with the flying theme, especially in terms of Voletarium. Definitely, you know, take some cues from that. And I think the Soarin at Disney-esque now also features like a more steampunky flying ships type of theme, basically. So yeah, in that sense, it really fits very well with this theme. So I figured a flying theater would be a really cool thing to build, especially also because there are no flying theaters inside of Rollercoaster Tycoon 2. So we'll have to build that ourselves, which is going to be really quite interesting, because I'm not quite sure yet how we're going to be doing that at this point in the recording. Obviously, while I'm saying this, I already built it. But yeah, that was something that I didn't really know yet how I wanted to do that. But I used a few tricks to actually end up building that. I'll talk about that in just a little bit. For now though, I just want to finish up the facades all around the city, basically. Really to immerse you into this cityscape, if you will. Yeah, just to kind of close it off, make sure that there are no leaks to the outside, or at least no viewports to the outside, basically. Because that way, yeah, the guests can really immerse themselves inside of this area. Now, this little city isn't that large compared to some of the other areas inside of this park. But I think the fact that it has a lot of paths going through it, and a lot of different sites that you can look at it from, will make it actually seem a lot bigger than it actually is. And that's something that I've been talking about at the start of building this as well, and I think that turned out really quite well in the end, because I would imagine people to be walking through here, and they'll probably walk a full loop, or at least I kind of designed it so that guests would be guided to always go in a new direction, and then eventually end up somewhere where they've already been, while still having paths that they haven't explored yet, which will really give this sense that this place is a lot bigger than it actually is. Because there will still be streets that I haven't gone yet, or they'll still be wondering where they would actually lead. Probably to one of the paths that I've been to before already, but that's, I don't think, or at least I think the guests will be losing kind of their sense of direction inside of this area, so I think that could be a really powerful trick to use inside of an area like this. So I think that's going to be pretty interesting. Obviously, no real guests are going to be inside of this area, so we can't actually see if that actually works. But I definitely think that there are some areas inside of real theme parks that kind of apply the same technique, where just by obscuring parts all the time and always revealing new things to see, you can really make a place seem a lot bigger than it really is. And that's really quite awesome. One of the places, for example, that I going into didn't really know how big it actually was oh dear, here we go again with names. Diagon Alley at Universal Studios Orlando, and I think they also have an exact copy of that at Universal Hollywood, but I'm not quite sure. Anyways, yeah, there you enter the street, and it's obviously Diagon Alley, as you know it from the movies. However, if you explore it just a little bit more, you can actually find that there are like 2 parallel streets to Diagon Alley, which both have their own theme again, and really set a different theme and have a lot more going on as well. So on the right, there's a parallel street with the train track going over it, and it's really quite cool. And then on the left, you have like the dark street, basically, with some of the dark magic bits and bobs. It's really quite awesome, and there are some really cool effects in there as well. So yeah, in that sense, you can definitely make an area that just really opens up, even though it is in a really small space, because the Diagon Alley area is actually really quite small. And one of the reasons for that is because the writer of Harry Potter, J.K. Rowling, actually demanded that that area would actually be built to scale, basically, which is not ideal for a theme park, because you need to get a lot of people through there, obviously. So it's really hard to kind of manage that when some of these, creative people may set some restrictions on that in terms of how big you can make it. But I think they solved it relatively well, though it can be a bit of a bottleneck in the end. Anyways, enough about Diagon Alley though. I'm now starting to build the entrance to the flying feeder. So this flying feeder, because it can't actually function, instead what I ended up doing is building 2 motion simulators inside of it. So this ride will actually have 2 different queues, and you'll see that in the end I'll have 4 feeders for the flying feeder. The reason for that, why I went up with that number basically, is because I basically looked at some of the blueprints for Flight of Passage, which in my opinion is by far the best flying feeder that I have ever experienced. And I've only experienced 3, honestly, but just in general even, it's one of the most impressive rides that I have ever done. And I can actually say that because when I got out of it, I kind of had this emotional feeling of, whoa, we can do this with theme parks now. It was a very strong, a very intense feeling that I got then. I remember it very fondly. Now, after it's been a really long time ago since I actually saw that movie, so it's not as if the movie itself has such a strong connection, but the ride itself did such a great job at actually evoking the feeling that you were actually, flying, or at least they did such a good job at trying to do that, it just kind of made me emotional about the fact that, we're at a point now where technology is so close to actually fooling a person. I know how these things work, so, I'm still looking at it and going like, alright, it's a screen with projectors and things are moving, mechanical parts, blah blah blah, but seeing the people next to you also get up and be emotional about this experience, I mean, that's something that's very strong. I think that's one of the most pleasant things about, visiting theme parks. For me personally, is also just enjoying how other people are enjoying it, because they look at it in a very different way than I do. Obviously when you're a bit more focused on all the details and how the lighting works and how the effects work, you're constantly looking around, or at least that's how I experience a thematic ride. But people who, do that just as a vacation that they might only do once in their life, they see they see those experiences in a very different way, and I think that's, I think they did that so well with Flight of Passage. Now, if you don't know what Flight of Passage is, you're best off not actually looking anything up. This is not a ride that you can see on video. I know people say that a lot about, rides, or especially dark rides, like, you don't want to experience it through a video because you don't get the full experience, but you actually can't experience this ride through a video, because it has 3D glasses. You're not allowed to film on the ride, so all the videos are taken from the baggage rack and things like that, so there are just no good videos to actually get a sense of what this ride actually does. So instead, if you ever get the chance to go to Orlando, go to Animal Kingdom and go to Pandora, the Avatar land at Animal Kingdom. Definitely do Flight of Passage and just go in without actually knowing much about the ride, because that's how I went in, and it definitely blew me away. So yeah, I'm hoping that this ride at Magic Towers Resort is also going to evoke at least something like that. You know, it's a bit of a bold move because I don't think a lot of theme parks actually succeed at getting to an emotional level. I think Disney is one of the best, Universe as well, to actually be able to do that. And I don't think there are a lot of other theme parks that are actually capable of that because they don't have that connection with people, with their nostalgic memories and stuff like that. You know, this is a pretty deep topic. Maybe I can go into that a bit further in the future at some point. You know, so that's very interesting how they were able to pull something like that off. But that's generally not something that other theme parks can very easily do, or at least it costs a lot of money, like it did for Disney. So yeah, back to our ride. So the type of movie that this will probably be playing is one where you will be flying around in some kind of airship, some kind of flying contraption, basically around some kind of fantasy world, where this city would also be based in. So you probably take off from this city and also land back into the city as well. Maybe we can do some cool tricks in terms of, you know, having the media, the video itself, actually be at night, if the guests got in at night. I think one of the notable examples of rides that actually do this is Smuggler's Run at Hollywood Studios in Disney World Orlando. There they actually, because the game is actually run, well, I'm saying the attraction is actually running, the simulator is actually running on a game engine, so that means that they can make things a bit more dynamic. That also means that they can just, you know, take into account the time of day and have the sky that you see inside of the video, or in this case game, you know, be based on the actual time outside as well. Those are some really cool technical things. That's also kind of, you know, the type of stuff that is really interesting to me personally, and what I'm, you know, hoping to to someday actually have a hand on as well inside of theme parks. This, you know, more technical type of stuff for theme parks, because in the end, by my day job, I am a programmer, so you know, combining the creative and technological stuff together, that's you know, really my jam. You know, I like building theme parks on the side. Alright, so yeah, I thought about covering the queue line here, but I decided not to do that. I just felt like it would be nicer to actually be able to look into it just a bit more, for the dollhouse effect, obviously. But also because it's kind of scary to obscure what is going on inside of the show building. Because I think it's very important that you, or at least that the viewer who looks at this, can immediately guess that this is a flying feeder. And I think that's one of the biggest, you know, challenges with building such a custom ride that is really not meant to be built inside of Rollercoaster Tycoon. Is actually trying to convey what it is. I think the wide walls with the curved, you know, sides and the support structure do a really good job at actually showing that this would be a some kind of cinema wall, some kind of screen, basically a projection screen. And I think that anyone who has been on Flight of Passage would also be able to guess the other side where the guest would actually be seated. However, I did get some tips from Brian from CP6 that I might be able to place some kind of ride vehicle in there just to kind of fill that up and get some actual seats in there. I honestly don't really know how to do that. I don't do a lot of ride hacking, so, you know, maybe I'll change that in the future. But for now, I'll just imagine this to be more of a Flight of Passage type of flying feeder, where yeah, I really don't want to spoil anything about that ride, honestly, if you haven't been yet. And I'm gonna guess that most of you have not been on that ride. So I'm not gonna spoil anything, but the seating, the way you're seated, is very different from just being seated in a chair, basically. So yeah, that is kind of, you know, my struggle here with deciding on how to actually show that. So I think I'll keep it like this for now, but if I in the future decide to actually change that out and change it to like the vertical drop coaster vehicles, which will work really well as chairs, like Soarin or Voletarium would have, especially Voletarium, because that has a vertical setup and doesn't start in a horizontal setup and lift up to the screen. Instead, it just moves forward towards the screen. Yeah, that's kind of something that I want to think about, maybe do in the future. Definitely let me know in the comments what you think, though, because I'm not quite sure what to do with that. Now, one really important thing to note at this point is that we're almost done. We're getting really close to actually closing off the loop here. That is the park. We have one little, very small spot where you can still place something, and I'm not quite sure what to do there yet. I honestly Actually, let's start with what I'm building right now, because otherwise it's gonna be gone before I get the chance to talk about it. So now that we have the parade vehicles, on the water, I figured that we would have to have some kind of spot where these parade floats would be able to be stored. So I wanted to have some kind of dock where they could, dock when they are not being used for a parade, just to be out of sight, and then they can just go through this canal to go to the actual waters of the theme park. With that build, though, we have a very small spot left where we can still build something, and I don't think an entire area will fit there unless we make it very deep, go in very deeply, go very far. That would maybe work, but I would also be okay with just building something small there. Maybe some kind of playground for kids, so it would be like a mini area type of thing. Maybe we can make it very deep and actually build an entire area in there. If you guys have an idea for an area that that you would really like to see, we can build just a single ride there that's like a standalone ride and doesn't really have an area on its own. That's also possible. We can build a restaurant there. Just about anything really. But we just don't have a ton of space, I think, just to do the regular type of area that we would generally do. Don't worry though, because once we have that area in here, that doesn't mean that it is the end of Magic Towers, because I still have a lot of things planned for around the park. And we will have some kind of second gate as well. Or at least, at the very least, definitely in the form of a water park, which is going to be really quite fun and really quite interesting. A little bit different from the theme park, but we are going to theme it really heavily again. It's just going to be a different type of rides that we're going to be placing in there. And it's going to, allow me to be really creative with that. Allow you guys to be very creative with that and come up with some cool ideas. So I'm really curious how that will turn out. But just let me know what you would think would work really well in that area. Anyways, we're getting really close to the end of this episode. It's a little bit shorter than usual. That's because I now have a full-time job. So I'm still, trying to find the balance. But I hope you guys are okay with that. Anyways, guys, thank you guys so much for watching as always. I hope you guys enjoyed this video. And I hope to see you guys in the next one. Bye-bye.